Good morning, everyone. It's Joker, and today we are back with another slime video. And we got the skill previews for Kazuma and Aqua. I did a community post about them just to make sure that people could see it. But we are going to do a video on it because they're two units, they're collab units, and I figured it'd be a good thing to make on it. Because just based on this information, we can pretty much guess what they do as a whole. So let's take a look at Kazuma. Now, one thing to note is that they're both water units. Obviously, Aqua, it would have been a really dumb thing to not make her a water unit, but Kazuma being a wind or a water unit is interesting. It's not bad per se, but that just means we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 water EX units. And if we take a look at the game as a whole, water is not really in a bad position. I would say the units that really need help are Earth. Because, you know, it looks like we have the same amount, but they are not the same. Out of these units, how many of them are actually usable? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 versus most of the water units. So I would have preferred, you know, Kazuma to be even wind, maybe? I mean, they have more units, but and they have gotten a lot of EX help lately. But I don't really know about making both of them water. But let's check out Kazuma first. So, let's see. Okay, that didn't work at all. Alright, whatever. We'll just have to deal with it. Open image in new tab? Oh, yeah, there we go. Alright. So, he has his first skill, 80 points, which, you know, is fair because it's a stacking team. We have a lot of points to play with. Decreases all targets' defense by 50% and raises attack by 50%. Now, this is a very good generic support unit, right? Just based on this. You know, everybody can benefit from having a higher attack and the enemy having lower defense, and it's all enemies' defense down. Not just a single unit, but everybody's defense gets nerfed, which means that even your AoE units, you know, are gonna do a lot of damage with a 50% attack buff and a 50% debuff on their, you know, their enemy's defense. He will fit on a lot of stacking teams, because if we take a look, like, Guy doesn't give himself attack. You do give yourself attack, but not 50%. You give 30%, and you are built for a burst team, but you can definitely put Milim on a stacking team, and it doesn't really matter. Physical Rimuru is buffing physical attack, so that will stack alongside normal attack. Hinata gives herself her own attack buff by 60%, so that won't be overshadowed. Valentine gives a physical buff as well, and then lowers... what does she lower again? Crit resistance. So you put her with Valentine. The hero, same thing. Albus, we'll talk about in a bit. Sokka, she does give everyone a generic attack buff, but it does require a number of units, and it's still just not 50%. So, okay. And Violet is lowering ult resistance and crit. You're giving yourself crit damage for physical units. And then Shuna is giving herself light attack and crit damage. So we needed an EX just attack unit, right? Because we have, you know, Space Rimuru, tried and true, where all the way down here, 40%. We've been using Light Milim for the 45% attack buff and her second skill, which is that orb steal kind of thing going on, where she changes all her orbs, which is really useful. But if we take a look, his other skill costs 25 points. You know what other skill costs 25 points? Milim's orb steal. Changes all souls, changes own souls to blues, and then increases protection gauge by 10%, or all gauges of blues by 10%. That costs 25 points. That's a pretty good skill to have on a stacking team, wouldn't you say? You know what else is a pretty good skill that would fit on a stacking team? A green orb change. That costs 25 points. And gives blue gauges increased by 10%. Yeah, because we have Megumin, who is 2 orange and 1 green. We have Darkness, who is a special convert. We don't have a dedicated green orb changer for this stacking team. And while technically you don't need it, you can get away with just using those 2 or just bringing a different unit. I feel like he is going to have an orb change. One of the 2, either a double green to blue or like an Own Souls convert alongside this generic attack buff, which would make Kazuma actually one of the best units to have on a stacking team anywhere, because he's giving generic support, a generic debuff, and changing to blues, if that's actually what ends up happening. And then he is a single target water magic, 490%, so he does get that extra 20% right here, and he doesn't get some additional effect, right? Because sometimes they lower defense, or sometimes they lower pierce resistance while having like a 470. But he's going to get the 490. Not as strong as Megumin, but yeah, whatever. That's fine. So yeah. Now I know a lot of people were hoping that Kazuma would have the orb swap that EX Rimuru has, or that the Hero 2.0 has. This skill right here, where he will change 1 alt orb into a blue. But I don't think it's going to be that, because Rimuru's costs 15 points, and I don't even have it leveled up all the way. It costs 15, right? And then the Hero 2.0, hers was free, because it was a burst team. And while I really, really hated that Rimuru's cost 15, it did make sense because you had a lot more points to play with. But I don't foresee this skill costing 25 points to be the orb swap unless it has something else attached to it. Some other secondary effect that is not just EX Rimuru's second effect, which is gauge increase, I think. Yeah, it's going to have to be something better than this 10% gauge increase for it to cost 25 points while being the orb swap. So I wouldn't bank my hopes on it too much. It is possible that it is, but I don't think it's probable that it's going to be an orb swap. I think that based on Aqua's kit that we're going to look at, this is probably an orb change. So she's also on Adventurer, fine, Schemer, which doesn't have a lot of units, and then Commander, which also doesn't have a lot of units. I wouldn't really call Kazuma a Commander. I would call him a Schemer, but whatever. So let's move on now to Aqua. And we will open image a new tab. Yes, alright, so also water unit. I love that they actually called her Useless Goddess. As soon as I saw that in the morning at 6:30, I giggled to myself in bed. I was like, Useless Goddess. Alright, so her first skill costs 80 points, but we don't know what it is. But we can pretty much tell what it is based on her second skill, which is increases the alt gauge of the ally with the highest attack by 40%. 40%! And then decreases a single target's pierce resistance until the end of battle by 5%. Unlimited. So, we have someone who rushes alt gauge, just like Rimuru, right? Because he gives, 20 up to 100 every time you use a protection skill. Didn't give her that, but this is rushing alt. We have Wind Trainee right here, who's giving 35%? Yeah, 35% alt gauge to the unit with the highest attack, so I have been using Trainee on the team because she's good, because she's got the convert and she's got that rush. The wind buff doesn't really matter because no one's wind on this team now, but it is very helpful. So having someone buff it by 40% means that Megumin is going to be looking really, really, really nice getting alts very quickly, because you can use that 40%, you can have Darkness giving the extra 20% to alt gauge on her convert, and then you can just have Megumin do big damage, maybe twice, maybe. And then the second part of the skill, an unlimited pierce resistance down. So we haven't had that yet. We've had crit resistance down, and we've had a big bulky pierce resistance down from Albus, but we've never had a stacking pierce resistance down, which is cool, I'm not sure how often I will use this skill, though, because it will get expensive very quickly, especially when I'm trying to rush Megumin's ults. So I think at most I'll use it like three times, maybe 4 if I get really, really lucky with points and there's a turn where I don't have to orb change. But it's cool. It's a little bit extra damage here and there, whatever, especially for the final nuke. But it's not gonna, you know, break your run if you don't get to use this multiple times. But you know, we have Albus, who gives all allies pierce rate and lowers pierce resistance by 50%. This skill costs 80 points, right? We have let's see, Violet. Violet lowers ult resistance by 55% and gives crit damage for 40%. Right? Okay, so this is an 80-point skill as well. This is an 80-point skill. And if we're lowering pierce resistance, but yet neither Aqua, nor Kazuma, nor Megumin, nor Darkness gives guaranteed pierce, well, I guess Kazuma, Megumin, and Darkness, guess who's gonna give pierce on this skill? Aqua. But it's gonna have to be something alongside guaranteed pierce. So, that's why I brought up Violet. Ult resistance down. Pierce power. It could be, you know, guaranteed pierce, ult resistance down by 60% or something, because Albus is giving 50% pierce resistance down, but we don't really need that because we're already getting pierce resistance down right here on Aqua. So they would stack together because this is a temporary one-turn debuff and this is a permanent debuff, so technically you could put them together and you could just lower their pierce resistance by a disgusting amount, which we will definitely do in some places. But I think Aqua is going to be guaranteed pierce and either a lot of pierce power up, that way it'll stack alongside the pierce resistance down. It could be ult resistance down by a large amount, but it's gonna be pierce. It's gotta be pierce. If it's not pierce, I don't know what they're doing, but it's gonna be pierce. And you can quote me on that. It's gonna be a pierce skill. Somewhere in that skill, it's gonna be 100% chance to pierce. But she's also an adventurer, Goddess of Destiny, and Hyper Heart, which Goddess of Destiny is a fairly good team. Especially since we just got Goddess of Destiny as a meta, and they've been continually adding units to it. It's just that most of these are built for like burst, right? You know, burst. You could put her anywhere. Burst. They're all burst units, which you can definitely put on a stacking team. Like, there's nothing preventing you from doing it. It's just that these optimal Gods of Destiny teams are focused around 4, 5 turn, 3 turn damage, and they don't really have a room for an 80-point skill, especially since Mirren doesn't raise cap or doesn't give you extra skill points. So I'm not sure how useful she'll be on Gods of Destiny. You could definitely put her alongside like Sokka and get 30% attack, maybe Shuna, and then you could base your stacking team off that. So you could have 1, 2, and 3, and then maybe Veldora, you know, because we're changing to greens, and then stack the magic power on Shuna. We'll try it out. We'll definitely try alongside Aqua. But yeah, so overall, I think that their kits are pretty good. This you could take anywhere, right? Aqua you could also take on multiple teams. You just give ult gauge to anybody. It's not like you don't need ult gauge. And then pierce resistance, I mean, is cool. It's a kind of a secondary effect. You're really going for the ult gauge increase, but if you happen to be piercing on a team, you'll do more. And then this pierce skill up on her first skill will be useful for most things. It kind of depends on what happens with the secondary effect of that. If it's only for magic characters, if it's other specific kind of things, then we'll see. But Kazuma seems to be very, very good for most stacking teams. Just like Megumin is good for most stacking teams because she's got the ult damage and the orb changing, so I'm pretty impressed with their kits so far. But I can understand why people would not be ready to summon, because it's only been 5 days. And this meta, these banners do leave on technically what is the 19th alongside everything else, but this is in Pacific time for me, so it is unfortunate that we're getting a very short Konosuba meta. I don't really know why, but that's it for me, guys. Let me know what you guys think of their kits. Will you be summoning for them? And do you like their kits, I guess is the most important part. But that's it for me. Take it easy, and I'll see you guys in about 9 hours or so.